Hey you, yes you, thanks for tuning in to the Healthy, Wild, and Free podcast. My name is David Benjamin. I'm your host and the founder of HealthyWildAndFree.com. If you're like me, you understand that health, the mind, body, spirit, heart connection, and living a green, eco-friendly, sustainable lifestyle are some of the most valuable and life-enhancing lessons that we can learn and pass on to our children to live happy and abundant lives. That's why this podcast was created, to help you grow in these areas. If you aren't already subscribed to the newsletter, go to HealthyWildAndFree.com, click the box at the top right-hand corner to get a free copy of our latest ebook, and you'll be subscribed to be notified about future podcasts. Thanks for subscribing and tuning in. Enjoy. Hello, podcast listeners. This is David Benjamin, your host of the Healthy, Wild, and Free podcast. Today we have a very special and unique guest. His name is Mark Romero, and I actually met him at the Awake and Empowered Expo. I highly recommend Googling Awake and Empowered Expo because it's one of the most unique events that I've been to, kind of merging science, spirituality, health, all these different things into one event. So I met Mark at the event, and he's a musician. And basically, Mark Romero's successful 19-year career as an executive manager and CEO took a dramatic turn the day a former NASA consultant discovered that his music contained frequencies that canceled negative energy. Though initially skeptical but willing to learn more, Mark accepted the invite to see the science behind the claim. That day he received what he affectionately refers to today as a crash course in Energy 101. Like the wind, whose effects can be seen by not the wind itself, Mark soon learned his music held comparable power. Parents of children with autism and ADHD, Alzheimer's patients, and stressed corporate executives all began passionately communicating to Mark the positive improvements his music had on their daily functioning and compelled him to dedicate his life to improving the welfare of others. Today, as founder and CEO of MarkRomeroMusic.com, Mark educates people worldwide on the science of energy as relates to the human functioning and empowers them with music. His music CDs and speaking performances have placed him on the stage with internationally respected leaders like Mark Victor Hansen, T. Harv Eker, Dr. Bruce Lipton, and I'm sure many others as well. So I'm going to bring him on the call right now. Mark, are you there?
I am. How are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Excited to be here.
Thanks. Well, I'm really appreciative that you have the time to do so. I want to start the interview asking a question that I ask all of my guests, and that question is, how did you kind of open up to working or kind of spending time and energy within the healing space?
You know, it's interesting because actually long before, when I first started my career, you know, I call it in the left brain world, somebody had given me a book. It was called Illusions by Richard Bach, and I read this book and I thought, wow, this is so cool. You know, it's talking about creation and manifestation and the use of the imagination, and that there was much more to us than, you know, what we see in the mirror. And so it kind of started off, you know, a passion of mine, you know, to read books and get an understanding of how life worked, which ultimately, you know, kind of fed into doing energy and learning more about energy and quantum physics and consciousness and stuff. So it really kind of started with that book. And interestingly enough, a buddy of mine that gave it to me, he asked me, he said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, you know, I want to be wise. And he said, no, you don't want to do that, man. That means you got to go through pain. Here, let me give you this book. He gave you the book anyways, and it really kind of just inspired me from that particular point in my life to really engage upon learning more about the intricacies of life. And I've always had this tremendous curiosity. What's this game all about? How do we play it? How do the pieces fit together? And so, you know, I'm still on my quest today to learn more and understand more and to help as many people as I can in the process.
Mm-hmm. What I thought was interesting about when you shared your story at the Awaken Empowered Expo, how you kind of went from this corporate workaholic and kind of how your wife played a role in that. Can you share a little bit? I mean, I thought it was funny. found some humorous value within that. Can you share a little bit of how that kind of happened and how your wife played a role and how that kind of evolved in your life?
Absolutely. Well, I think with many of us, we're presented with a model. You go to school, you get out of school, you go get a day job, you work your way up the corporate ladder. If you had any dreams, be responsible, put them on the back burner, go get a job and all that stuff, and work your way up this ladder. And, of course, the higher you work your way up the ladder, the more money you're going to make, the more bells and whistles you're going to have, and the shinier your car is going to be and all that good stuff. And then when you get up there, you're going to be happy, content, and fulfilled. And over the course of 19 years, that's what I bought into. It was like, okay, I'm going to work my way up this ladder. Went through sales, was extremely successful. I started a company in my garage, and in 5 years, I'm the CEO of a $15 million a year business. I should have been happy. I should have been content. I should have been fulfilled, but I wasn't. And I'm like, kind of going, wait a second. I kind of felt ripped off. And it all hit, really kind of, the nail hit the head. One night I come home, and there's my wife, Lara, in the hallway. And she has a very specific look, especially now after 13 years of marriage. I see it quite often. It's the look of, I'm going to hit you with some wisdom. Here it comes. You might not want to hear it, but I'm going to hit you with it anyways. And I came home, and there was the look, and there she was in the hallway, and she just got right up in my face, and she said, listen, I don't care how much money you're making. I look in your eyes, and you're dead. When are you going to have the courage to go for the dream? And, of course, I always throw this in, like any good husband, what do? We try to find fault with what they said and say, no, that's not right. But like any really good husband, you realize, what's the point, dude? You're wrong. Yeah, she hit it right on the head, and she was right. Because I wasn't happy. I wasn't content. I wasn't fulfilled. I was more stressed out. I was unhealthy. I'm like kind of going, man, I'm not going to be able to live this way. And that night it reminded me, ever since I was a kid, I had a dream that I wanted to help people on their journey through life. And, like with many of us, we put our dreams and our callings on the back burner to be responsible and play that game. And I just realized I can't do it anymore. I'm not getting any younger. I got to go for it. So the next week I went in and I told my partners, that's it. I'm out. I'm done. I'm resigning. They thought I was crazy. They gave me a bad time about it. They always knew I was a little out there anyways. And I left, and I finished up, a time with them and was going to embark upon what I saw as being my calling to be a motivational speaker in a very traditional sense, kind of like a Tony Robbins with maybe a Latin flair thing. And that's what I embarked upon. And needless to say, things unfolded completely contrary to that, but that's a whole other story.
I'm curious, I think at any given time in someone's life, they have a certain kind of emotional state, physiological state. We all carry around so many different experiences and baggage and all these different types of things. So I'm curious, from your kind of transformation from kind of working in the corporate world to kind of like you said, sort of more of a left brain, work hard, make money, be successful kind of mindset, to the doing work that you feel has more purpose, more fulfillment. How did you change during that time? What was the before you, and what is the after you as far as your emotional state, your levels of happiness, fulfillment? I mean, all these different things. People, I think, really don't see the big picture. They just think, it's kind of flimsy or whatever. But how have you felt different, and how have you changed during that process?
People will commonly ask me, well, what changed? And I answer with one word: everything. Everything changed. I completely had to reconfigure. I think, as we grow up, as we go through life, we develop paradigms of how we think that life works. What is successful? What is going to make me happy? Certain belief structures that we hold in place that run our life. And when I made that shift, it's a big shift. It's a big shift when you go from a career to fulfilling a calling. And you literally have to update the operating system software of your mind. I mean, it's like going from, Windows 98 to, Mac OS. I mean, it's like a huge shift that takes place. And it was hard. I mean, when you build your life on a foundation and then you realize that that foundation is obsolete and doesn't work anymore, well, that means you got to tear down the foundation. Yeah, I literally had to tear down the foundation of my belief structures, who I was, how I viewed the world, how I viewed myself. All that had to be reconfigured. I would like to say that it was easy and that I just, sashayed into this new career easily and effortlessly, but it was the most challenging time of my life. And, being kind of a left-brain corporate guy, I had a chip on, I had a chip on my shoulder. My wife said, yeah, you had some ego running in the mix because I'd been very successful in this, at least what was defined as success in that old paradigm. And going into the new paradigm, all that stuff had to be released and let go and reconfigured. So things really changed immensely. And, would I go and change anything? Absolutely not. I mean, it was the most amazing experience of my life and continues to shape and shift me and define me and who it is that I'm in to who I am today.
Mm-hmm. So how did you said at first you wanted to kind of be the Latin Tony Robbins, if you will. How did music come into play there? Where did that how was that sparked?
Well, interestingly enough, I went to, I'm going to date myself here, but I went to go see Pink Floyd The Wall, 1980 in concert, and, was mesmerized, by David Gilmour on the guitar. And so, like any excited high school kid, I went home the next day. I said, oh, Dad, man, you got to get me a guitar for my birthday. And so he got me a guitar, and I picked that thing up, and it was love at first strum. So even throughout my whole career, music was there. I'd get up, at 5 or 4 in the morning and play for 2 hours before going to work. I'd get home at night. My roommate played bass. We would just, jam for hours upon hours. So music was always something that I loved to do. And, I started on this, speaking career that I saw a very traditional model. Music was not part of that vision. But in 2002, I released a CD entitled Sueños Infinitos, which means infinite dreams, just because I wanted to have the experience of going into a studio and have the experience of making an album just for fun, not with the intention of getting into the business, certainly not with the intention of doing, healing music. It was something I wanted to do just for fun. And so I did that. That album came out. I was working with a woman who was helping me develop my speaker platform, and I sent her the CD after we'd been working together for 2 months. And she called me up. She goes, what the heck is this? I'm going, well, that's my music CD. She goes, you didn't tell me you played music. I said, well, no. What does that got to do with my speaking? And she goes, everything. You got to start doing music and speaking together. And I'm like, my first thought was, are you high on crack? There's no way I'm going to go speak and play at the same time in some corporate thing, No way. It's not going to happen. But she was very persuasive, and she said, listen, let's just play with it. Let's just give it a try. And then before I knew it, the only keynotes I was getting hired for were music and speaking keynotes, where I had a talk way back when. It was called Play Beautiful Music Throughout Your Life, How to Play Beautiful Music Throughout Your Life. And next thing I knew, I was getting hired by these women associations, and they just loved the whole concept of music and little nuggets of wisdom to help them create more successful and fulfilling lives. So that's how music kind of intertwined its way into the speaking thing, even though I was very reluctant to go down that path because I never had a problem speaking in front of 1,000 people, but expressing my creativity through music in front of 2 people in the room, I all of a sudden became a shy kid. So there was a lot of fear and a lot of stuff that I had to work through and process through to step into getting to the point where I was at least somewhat comfortable sharing my music in public.
Mm-hmm. During your music, you talked a little bit about intention and, really kind of the healing aspect of music and specifically the intention you put into your music. How I know there was the NASA guy who the NASA guy, who basically, said that basically described your music and how it kind of removed negative energy. Can you talk a little bit about kind of that, what happened there, and explain that a little bit further?
Sure. It's funny, go figure, the left brain corporate guy marries a doctor of metaphysics. So I was always getting exposed to things that I thought were woo-woo back then. She introduced me to EFT probably 13 years ago, breath work and Reiki and all these different things that have really become commonplace today. And she goes, hey, you know what, I got this friend that runs this wellness center. Would you go play for their open house? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll go play, So I'm done playing, and the woman that runs the center comes up to me, and she goes, oh, my gosh, I hear these tones in your music. And I'm looking at her. I'm like, oh, man, I had an intuitive hit. I go, this lady's going to get weird on me. I could just tell by looking at her. And she gets right up in my face right after that. She goes, and nobody can hear the tones but me. So I'm like shaking my head, yeah, I heard some tones too back in the 80s, listening to Floyd and watching the lava lamp and hanging out with my buddies, man. We heard some tones. And she goes, no, I'm serious. Give me one of your CDs. I know these scientists that are going to be really interested in your music. So I'm like giving her a CD, here you go. Maybe she'll go away. She won't bother me anymore. And I didn't think anything more of it. And a few weeks after that, I get a call from a gentleman by the name of Dr. Ronald Jones. He was a former top consultant to NASA. He was a microbiologist. He had served on the team that had helped develop the MRI machine. He had served on presidential advisory boards for science. And he was really kind of involved in a cool study. And the study was this: what are the negative impacts of the over 80,000 man-made chemicals that have permeated into our air, food, and water, and all the electronic devices that we're now being exposed to, like cell phone signals, laptops, fluorescent lights, all these different things. So they were involved in this study. And what they were noticing was that all this stuff is actually causing static and noise, causing stress, disconnecting us from this most magnificent field of energy that quantum physics has really come to define, what the spiritual esoterics have been talking about for thousands of years, that we are all an expression of. And so he had actually gotten a recording of an Indian monk by the name of Paramahansa Yogananda chanting. And while people listened to this chant, he was looking at what was happening to their brain waves and their physical energy. And he noticed that their brain waves were going into a state of harmony and actually able to achieve higher levels of consciousness, more memory focus, but also the creativity, the intuition, the accessing the sixth sense. So he's like going, wow, this is interesting, but nobody's going to listen to a 1930s recording of some Indian guy chanting. Let's go find music that'll do the same thing. So he calls me up, invites me to a lecture you were mentioning in the bio. I'm getting this dissertation on Energy 101 and quantum physics. I am completely blown away. They have this guy up on stage who's like, one of these 6'5", 7% body fat guys, all muscle, and this guy's going weak, with a cell phone in his field, or a laptop, holding a laptop computer, or a cloth with furniture polish, or a cup that had one time had gasoline in it. And I was absolutely floored. Never seen anything like this. And they're talking and demonstrating how these things we're exposed to are compromising our energy and putting us into a state of disharmony. So, I'm in shock, but then halfway through the program, he goes, Mark, come up here and start playing some music for us. So I come up there and I start playing, and I see people's physical energy shift instantly in front of my eyes. I'm like going, what the heck is that? Quite honestly, it's kind of freaking me out. But I see people where they were going weak, all of a sudden they're remaining strong. People that lacked flexibility, that couldn't touch their toes, I'm playing, and all of a sudden they're putting their hands on the ground. I see these huge shifts, and I'm like going, man, this is some out there woo-woo stuff, man. I'd never seen anything like it. And I kind of went home